The only other really pseudo interesting news that had come out is apparently they've released information um, about the Marvel Avengers progression system is going to be adjusting
In a
uh,
bad way.
in a bad way. Yeah, so apparently um, they're going to be slowing down progression.
Because I
And
think that people are hitting the end too easy.
yeah, which is one of the again gets kind of falls into line with our main topic. It's one of the Jesus fat rip. It's one of the pitfalls you can fall into with these types of games, and a lot of games like this, games as a service in general, as one of the major pitfalls you can fall into is trying. You need to find to strike a balance between upcoming content and keeping players invested enough so that your devs can make more shit for them to get invested in. So a lot of times they'll introduce mechanics such as RNG or RNG and loot or RNG and gameplay where like randomly rolled dungeons that have different modifiers on them that kind of spruce up gameplay in a way that don't require as much development time but still keep players somewhat involved, because you have to strike that balance so you can still create engaging good content without while keeping players invested in the current content so they don't blow through everything full speed. So they'll implement some kind of thing, whether it be time gating, whether it be RNG gates, something to keep people in the loop longer so they could give the actual developers enough time to make more shit. So people just don't get to endgame in a week and then just fucking leave the game while they wait for more stuff to come out.
Yeah, the problem is they don't have good content.
Oh, yeah. In Avengers
The
case.
characters, the writing's garbage. The characters are written horrible. The story's bad. The gameplay's bad. Like, everything about the game just does not work. And some people, like, when it's playing as a one-player experience, it's firing on all cylinders and it works well. But when it's the moment it turns into the other style of game, the looter game, it just falls to pieces.
Yeah.
And it feels very much like they were going to make a one-player game, and then Square is like, "Hey, let's get it on that Destiny goodness, baby."
Yeah.
And as we've seen, and as we're going to talk about, most looter shooters fail because they're terrible. It's not a easy fucking model to do right. It sucks but it's true. It's very difficult to make something where you're supposed to go in and play it every day and make it engaging. Like, if I didn't enjoy the gameplay, and even in Genshin, like, grind is just starting to get to me, because if you unless you grind it in a very specific way, being successful becomes hard. And I'm playing it the way I like playing it, focusing on one thing, getting that one thing maxed out and taken care of, then focusing on the next thing just doesn't work nearly as well as, I mean, eventually I'd have to do that anyway, but it's a harder mountain for me to climb because I'm not focusing on artifacts first. You
Yeah.
have to focus on
But
artifacts. You have to
even
spend
then,
countless hours grinding for artifacts. It's a little
the
less
the artifact
fun.
grind is trash. Don't get me wrong. I think they'll probably implement some kind of reroll system to take the gear you have and make it better. But I think right now, again, they're still in that thing where they're trying to keep people somewhat invested while continue to make new content. And then eventually, as especially with gacha games, as they get older, they become more. They continue to add quality of life into the game that makes it just a little bit better, because there'll be more content down the road and hopefully more repeatable content. Because that's one good thing Genshin suffers from. There's not enough repeatable content. And some games have this issue too. It's games as a service. They don't have enough engaging, repeatable content, which is something Avengers probably fucking suffers from too. I never played it, so I don't know. But let me read this article real quick, and then we can go into the main topic, because this also hints on some of the issues that these games face, just that makes them so difficult to properly develop. But so this is from IGN. It says Marvel Avengers keeps fixing the wrong problems by Simon Cardy. So basically, the dev team recently announced that an XP rework that will make grinding hero levels a slower process than before. As you grind your heroes up to their 50 levels, you unlock abilities that really put on show the fun that can be had with Avengers. And I've heard that that's one good thing. When I watched Skill Up review it, he liked the combat in some instances. Some of the character design, their kit design had signs that could allow for fun gameplay, but there's a lot of hindrances outside of that. So they're making you take longer to get to the stuff that some of the people actually enjoy.
Yeah, the characters don't really get fun until you unlock those abilities and shit, and now they're making it harder to unlock those abilities and shit because
Yeah.
you really start kind of like the way Warcraft was working, where the characters be fun. They get their kit near the end of your leveling.
You mean
Uh,
Warframe? Or
no, well, you were
oh
talking about how World of Warcraft was, where you'd play it, but you wouldn't get your really good character abilities or any really good character abilities till you got near the
oh,
end
you mean
of.
with okay, yeah, I get what you're saying. The thing is with World of Warcraft that's problematic is that like Final Fantasy, the way they do it is it's all very straightforward where your stuff will come with your levels. And WoW, they don't do that. They've been working off a borrowed power system for ages, where they'll have you get new and interesting things to your kit, but they're always locked behind something outside of the conventional level up loop. And the problem I had with Shadowlands is that they took it to an extreme where I had to go through my 10 levels or whatever to get the max Shawn. I didn't get a single substantial ability those whole levels. So I was just playing the fucking game, and my character did not change an inch. But once you get there, then you're in this whole other grind, which is where all your abilities are. And that the whole reason that's there is because they're just time gating at that point. They want you to take a little bit longer to actually get to all the impactful shit. So that first 10 hours you spend playing the story, where you're not making any progress whatsoever, is time taken away from you actually grinding the actual thing that that takes like that is connected to like daily shit you do and stuff like that. So yeah, it's the same idea here, and it's a good connection that a lot of times these games, again, they have issues with keeping players in an engaging loop without either boring them, and you can't keep everyone happy. Obviously, you'll always lose players in some way or another. But that's why I like Final Fantasy's approach very well. Is that they've completely accepted it. They're like, if you're feeling worn out, just unsub. Take a break from the game and come back when there's more content that you find interesting. Like, that's a very humble way to approach these types of games in comparison to like WoW or these other games where they're completely 100%. They have whole teams designed to focus on player engagement, keeping people in the game for as long as humanly fucking possible. Where 14 comes along, again, they're very much a single player, or not single player, they're very much a Final Fantasy game first. They're like, hey, if you need to take a break, go ahead, do it, man. Take your time away and come back when you feel refreshed. It's a very refreshing take on this kind of run with this, is that they'll keep putting out the content as they do, but if you're tiring yourself out, just go do something else, because there's so many other games to play. So it's an interesting way of handling that. But okay, so basically they've reevaluated how quickly EXP. They said the current experience curve isn't really a curve at all. In most RPGs, the amount of XP you need to level up increases as you gain levels, but our system is a straight line. This has led to pacing issues such as skill points currently being rewarded too fast, which may be confusing and overwhelming new players. Sounds dumb as fuck, because I've never heard that complaint at all from anybody. While most RPGs I've ever played do require more XP per level than the preceding ones, these tend to offer a level or variety and replayability that Avengers simply doesn't have. In fact, the speed in which you level up characters and gain new powers is one of the more welcoming aspects of Avengers post-game. For an experience designed to let you play as some of the most beloved hero superheroes of all time, constantly gaining new abilities and mixing and matching them to create your own version of these heroes is what kept me playing continuously early on, and I never found it overwhelming. The decision's a little bewildering. And they're adding more of a grind to some of their endgame systems, and they basically have been kind of silent about certain things. They've lacked communication, which again is another very important pitfall to avoid talking about Outriders, is that communication is dire with these fucking games. And a lot of these devs just will go silent for months on end. You won't see roadmaps, and not every game needs to have a roadmap. As long as the devs are coming out every couple months and being like, hey, this is what's going on. Which is another thing. Again, I'm a fanboy. I think Final Fantasy does very well. Their devs are very up in front, and they're quick to fix small problems that are affecting things. Like recently, the Bojangles Warfront came out, and there was a massive issue with the actual raid that is run because it doesn't give you like a certain amount of experience. Or I don't remember exactly what it was, the problem people were having, because I haven't done a lot of it. But within a week or so, they're like, hey, we're going to release a hot patch, and they fixed the problem. It was fixed. And they came out and said, we're sorry, we anticipated blah, 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 but we fixed it. We understand the where we fell short, blah, 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 blah. But They have their little live letters every couple of weeks. They're very up in front with what they intend to do with the game, what they want to do with the game, and what they're looking for from the players in regards to feedback and stuff like that. I feel like there's a very healthy relationship between the devs and the community for 14. And games like this, that is so fucking important. Even if you're doing dumb shit, at least keep it in the forefront so people know. Because if you just don't talk to anybody and there's nothing happening, people will leave in droves. You need to stay in communication with your customers, technically. That'd be like you running a store and you don't fucking talk to any of the people that come in. You just let them come in, take the shit off the shelves, and all you have is checkout things or whatever the fuck. I mean, that's kind of a shit comparison, but you know what I am. I'm good at shit comparisons. But this is such a vital element of fucking these types of games, these games as a service games, because the future, the thing that the consumers are fucking invested in of that game, lies on the consumers, and they must be treated with the respect that comes with. They need to be respected to a degree, and communication is an element of is a byproduct of respect. So I don't know, the fact that it just, again, a lot of red flags here. There needs to be, again, open communication, and hopefully shifting it now to Outriders. Now that was pretty much all the news. We don't really give a fuck enough about Avengers. It just kind of fits in. It sucks to hear that's all doing all awfully, because I'm sure a lot of people want a game like this. It's just, this ain't it. People want this. It's just this is a horrible step forward from Square, and I don't know who the devs are, but so it makes me feel bad for those players that want this experience to be good and just aren't getting it. But these are some of the typical pitfalls we see when it comes to these games as a service looter type experiences. This ain't a shooter, but it follows the same idea. It's a melee looter, whatever the fuck. Oh my god. So, again, shifting to Outriders, right? The game has shown a lot of promise. And one unique difference that we have said before, but just to make clear here, because some people may jump on us for it, is that Outriders is not a games as a service game. Square has come out already and said, hey, we're not intending to have this game run for a certain amount of years. It's very much closer to Borderlands, where it's still a looter shooter, but the game will be a complete product on launch, hopefully. That, again, that may be up to an opinion piece. May not, that'd be something we'd have to see how much of a complete product it is. And then moving forward, they'll obviously patch the game if some major issues come up. They've already patched the demo a few times. But they're going to support the game if there's enough people playing, and the support will come through just DLC. So like they drop a new story content that you'd pay a certain amount of money for. You're not paying any subscription services. It's not going to be funded through cosmetic purchases. So it's very much just a complete game you play start to finish. If there's enough people playing it and they get enough money coming through, then they'll start working on expanded content for it that they'll drop in increments. So it'd be something more along the lines of what Borderlands did. And a lot of people, I think, at the very least, enjoyed the way Borderlands handled it. And I think a lot of people look at Borderlands fondly because it was a great looter shooter, and it knew its lane and it stayed in it, and it never tried to adopt these other crazy games as a service properties. Okay, someone sent me a message. That was fucking weird. All right. So that's, again, one major thing that Outriders needs to manage is their devs need to come out. If they need to be aware of what their community is saying and be open to the criticism that may come from whatever issues the community may have, and be willing to fix that so they keep people retained or at least enjoying the game. Because plenty of games have this issue, and these games need that feedback. Because obviously you're tuning it to the core player base to keep them involved. Oh my goodness, my throat's so fucking hurt. I don't know what the hell's going on, but it's my voice getting raspy. All right, so Shawn, we've both played the demo. You've played a lot more than I have. Are there, as we move forward, are there any other major pitfalls that we've seen from other games that have attempted this that you think Outriders should strive to avoid?
Sameness between like playable classes or class types is definitely one of them I think they need, and they seem to be on the right path. I haven't had the opportunity to play the other character classes, but I have watched a lot of play videos of people doing critiques on Outriders, and that's I what I've heard that is good. I think, or at least it shows as a good sign, is that groups that have played like earlier demo releases, like publicity releases that were done, they could only play as Technomancer, and they were talking about how the way the Technomancer is forced to play when there's just a group of you is enemies can close on you a lot easier because you don't have anybody that's an in your face. Like if the characters are designed the way that media is portraying, it's a good thing, I would say. Um, Supposedly, like I was saying earlier, that you heal through dealing damage. You're basically a superhuman. You're a mutant of some kind. And so you're if you play according to the class's style, you're going to heal a lot better than you would play just playing it however you wanted to. So I'm not getting nearly as much health like sniping dudes from a distance, although I haven't been able to calculate it and prove this, but I'm hoping it is the case, as I do when I'm up in a group, and it seems to be true, but I don't have the exact numbers to see how that healing is done. So I'm going to actually do some experiments to test that to see if that's the case. Because if it's not, then all you have again is a situation where anybody can play their character however they want to, and it just so happens that some abilities are only useful up close and some abilities are only useful from far. But the Technomancers, when the guy was playing, it was just 4 Technomancers, and they kept getting pushed back. Whereas I don't get pushed back a lot. I haven't noticed that happening to me much. Only a handful of times when all of my abilities were on cooldown and my guns weren't quite powerful enough did I get pushed back. I think it happened like 2 or 3 times. Other times I'm usually up in their space as opposed to them coming to me. Whereas the Technomancer is designed to be a ranged support character. It's the only class that can, outside of the normal damage healing. So if they avoid like too much sameness between characters, because yes, your gameplay is different between uh, the uh, the guardians that you play in um, Destiny, like the how you play the characters doesn't feel massively different. I mean, you can wade into a group of characters, a group of enemies with any class you want in Destiny. You can use whatever guns you want. None of that really matters. It's just what super abilities do you want to have as a character? That's the real thing. Like what super abilities do you want to have? Okay, then you play that one. But there's not enough difference between them for me to feel like there's one that suits me better than others, except that I love double jumps. And so I went with uh, the what
Hunter.
fucking class did I like playing?
Hunter has
I
double
remember
jumps.
Hunter, yeah, the Hunter. Like I love double jumps. I think double jumps are super fun, so that's why I went with Hunter. Hunters were supposed to be more nimble, and in the air they kind of are, but that's about it. Uh, I just never felt that the classes were different enough that they had roles that they could fulfill. And in this one, you're supposed to have roles. And I think having roles encourages team-based play, and I think it makes for a deeper, more fulfilling gameplay experience. And you're going to feel like you're contributing more. And I can say that because having played MMOs and seeing how each role has its own niche and why each role is important, it's fun to feel like you're doing your role justice.
Yeah, 100%.
Uh,
I also
if
think,
we were all in the same fucking class, doing the same thing that the next guy's doing, it's not as much fun and it doesn't feel as deep of an
yeah,
experience.
you don't feel
So I
like
think that's
there's
one thing.
that teamwork element and being able to be part of a team where each role is distinctively defined and allows, because again, all of this is striking a balance because you want to make sure that people have a little bit of freedom of play in what they do within their class, so there's some element of expression, so they're not just you're this, you can't wiggle at all, the no wiggle room, but also you want to make sure that they're in a distinctively defined role that they could perform in while also being able to express their own style of play within that role. So you kind of want to make sure, and on top of that, you want to make sure that the class itself is unique enough, both visually, design wise, from every other class, where you feel like there is a class fantasy. Like if you're playing, again, go to 14, blah blah blah. Say you're playing a bard or whatever. All of your abilities are visually distinctively connected to music. So all of your attacks look very heavily, or archery, blah blah blah, same shit. So the way your class is defined, the way you would do stuff, the way it sounds, everything's very heavily music inspired, and it makes you feel like a bard. Same thing. If you're swinging around the new Spider-Man game, it makes you feel like a Spider-Man game. It's the same idea of class fantasy. It's just separated amongst the roles within one of these types of games. So as the Pyromancer, I want to feel like a cool ranged mage that has a lot of damage I can dish out from a distance on top of my weapons. And I haven't played enough of Outriders, but I hope that they get to a point where there's like distinctive gear based on the class you're playing. So say like a Pyromancer would have more gear. You don't necessarily need to look like a fucking magician, but like your gear is more maybe heavily cloth inspired and you look more like a mage kind of thing. And if you're playing the tank class, maybe you have more plates of armor on your gear or something like that. I don't know exactly how they do that. As far as I understand, I think all the loot, at least the early loot, is just the same, but maybe when you get to later in the game, you'll find more class structured loot, which would be cool, because again, that builds that class fantasy. If you're the tank going in, you don't want to wear like a fucking birthday suit with like flip-flops on. Like you want like cool like plated armor, not fully medieval level shit like you're playing Dark Souls, but maybe like cloth with metal plates on it. You feel more like you're supposed to look like a tank. So I think that there's a lot of elements that build the class and make it feel good, not only through gameplay, but you really want to feel proud of what you do. It sounds kind of weird, but you want the class to reward you in that way where you feel super proud of fulfilling that role, both in gameplay, style, and how it feels when you both look and play as your character. It's a very important thing, I think, to this, and I think Destiny does that well. Maybe not as much in gameplay, but overall look and design and style and how they act or look or feel. I think the distinctiveness of Hunters, Titans, and Warlocks makes it builds that class fantasy. When you're playing as a Warlock, you feel like a Warlock, and I think that's cool. So if Outriders, hopefully when the full game comes out, we'll see more, we'll be able to talk about it a bit more. Hopefully they'll be able to build that visually, where if you're playing the tank class, you look, feel, and act like a tank. That'd be nice. If you're playing the Technomancer,
the looks were definitely different in Destiny. I'll give them that. They made the armor look different. They made the characters look different. You could tell who was playing what and what they were doing. It's just there was no role.
Yeah, I think that's a good sign. If you can look at someone from a distance and tell exactly what type of class they are, that's a very good sign that they did the visual design incredibly well. You do the same thing in 14. Like if you're looking at like a Dragoon or something, the Dragoon armors, they look like fucking Dragoons. Like if you look at a Dragoon from a distance, you know that's a Dragoon. If you're playing, I don't know, I haven't played enough WoW. I would love to say more about it, just so I'm not just fucking sucking Final Fantasy's dick the whole time. But it's just because it's a good comparison. It does a lot right when it comes to this stuff. It avoids a lot of the pitfalls that we see in these games, even though it's an MMO, so it's a completely different experience. It is a subscription-based, ongoing service game. So, but that I would love to see that too. Maybe some of the legendary. Do they have legendary armor in Outriders? Or is it just weapons?
It hasn't been released yet. So far, it's just weapons.
Okay, so
there's a lot that we don't know.
Yeah. Again, this is all off of the demo. The full game can come out and blow us out of the water with how it handles its loot system, how it handles its class fantasy, how it feels to play the classes. They can also update it between demo and full game. Obviously, there may be some heavy changes that happen because again, this is kind of a test. They're testing servers. They're giving people an idea of how they. Oh my gosh, how the game plays. So, if the full game comes out and they make some distinct changes around this, I think class fantasy is as important as any other aspect of it, like the gear grind and all that stuff. I think those are all very important elements that should all be weighed pseudo similarly. And I would love to see something like that. Like, I would love to get like, oh shit, dude, I got the legendary tank armor, bro, and now I look like a fucking like Chad, bro. Like, I could walk up to them and they'd be scared of me, kind of shit, just because like you look like a badass, tanky, beefy motherfucker with your armor. That's super important in these games. So, and they've already said there's not going to be any like microtransactions. So that's nice too, because we know that all the gear that will be designed for this game, or has been designed for this game, is in the game and achievable through game. So if they do have cool gear sets, we know they won't be microtransactions, which I think defeats or hurts a lot of the class fantasy, being able to buy cool gear. I think that's dumb as shit. And that's not one thing Destiny does wrong. A lot of MMOs do that too. Kind of wrong. Final Fantasy is fallen into that sin. They have like paid for transmogs and shit, which I think is dumb as fuck. And WoW has paid for transmogs, although they're not nowhere near as like cool. Normally they're like kind of chill things, but I think those are dumb. I think they hurt the gear grind because you have all this cool gear that's not something you work towards. You just buy it, and I think that kind of hurts the feel of a character, because you don't feel as invested if you can just spend $10 and get a cool gear set for your character. You don't feel like you built them up. So that's also a really good sign. The fact that this is, again, more like a Borderlands type experience. See, so I kind of want to play this fucking game now. I kind of want to just fucking hop into the demo and play, just to experience more of it. Because there's a lot of promise there.
The experience is very limited, and I'm impressed with some of it, but I'm more interested, to be honest, in what the promise is, to see, because what interests me is that the videos show these varied environments and large enemies that you fight, and if they've got like MMO style strategies and like boss fights and like different phases and things like that, I think that is something that's very interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Hoping that they do that. I'm hoping they do have varied environments. I'm hoping that it does kind of go in that direction. There is that the classes have distinctive roles in combat, like they're saying, as opposed to, okay, well, I made a technomancer, and now I'm going to be running up in the middle of combat all the time and doing that kind of bullshit. Like, because the technomancer, with being the long range, the pyromancer holding the middle ground, and then the tank and the trickster running up into the group of enemies and moving around. Like, I have had a number of successes. Like, I played through the game solo, so I had to support myself. When you're playing solo, you don't get as many experiences to really like uh, absorb yourself and your role. Uh, so when you run like, I was playing somewhat conservatively until I had smaller groups to deal with, and then I'd run up and mix it up. And now that I've gotten stronger, like, I am running into an arena, because right now I'm hoping they change this when it moves into more of the open world thing, because even Borderlands is guilty of the arena thing, and that's kind of how looter shooters tend to work. Is you have a connective space, and then you go into a battle, which could be say it's a factory, or you'd call it a dungeon if you want, and each one is filled with a bunch of enemies, and you have to fight your way through the enemies, and you clear that space, and then you move on to the next space, and you do it again, and as you're doing it, enemies are dropping loot, and then on occasion there's chests. Now in the demo, the chests no longer have epic or legendary items. They only drop from enemies now, and you're able to get repeat rewards from reading quests, whereas before you had to reload a chapter and play through that chapter. So they've taken care of that kind of hurdle, and they also have added some quality of life stuff. Like, now you can do comparisons. It's not as organically like used as the comparisons for in like Destiny or other looter shooters, so it's not quite as simple to uh, view a device in a store, or a weapon or piece of armor in a store, and know that what its stats are completely compared to the one you have. You have to hit a little button for it, but it's still there. So I can see even now with just the demo, they're already making quality of life improvements. which is nice.
Yeah. And
The
again,
grind,
that makes it helps make the community feel cared for too, to a degree. So again, building that healthy developer community relationship is super important in these. So if they maintain that, they're quick with their updates. They're understanding with like, hey, this is a massive problem we know of or something, and we're aware of it and we're working to fix it, but it's going to take time. So we need you guys to have some patience with us. We're working on remedying some of these issues you may have with Endgame, or if anything comes up, we don't even know yet. But just the fact that they're quick to address, they're quick to understand, it just helps. It helps as a community, as a consumer, you feel like you're being respected and cared for. And that goes miles to player retention outside of developing stupid fucking systems to keep people involved. If you make the community feel like they're cared for and understood, that works millions of times better to keep people around compared to here, hop on, do these dailies so you can stay around and shit like that. It just works wonders. So it's again, there's so many good signs of a great experience ahead of us. It's just like we're saying, we don't have that experience yet. So we're just a little cautious considering all the failed attempts we've had so far at these types of games. But definitely, like that's an awesome sign. And again,
I'm hoping that the different environments might have more than just a visual flair too. Like if you go through a swampy area, maybe your movement's slowed down.
yeah,
Or
environmental hazards, that'd be cool.
Yeah, like
they had that one set piece,
that kind of stuff.
That one set piece at the beginning where that storm hits the forest and you're running through it and there's like lightning flashing everywhere. Imagine an open area where you're going through that and you can have storms roll through. Maybe they buff enemies or they debuff your team so you can get caught out and fight in a storm, and you got like all these environmental lightning strikes hitting down and you have enemies flooding you, and then they're getting buffed by the lightning because they're like animals or some shit. I don't fucking know. But it's something cool like that, and it just rolls through. Almost like the idea of a public event, but it's not like all front and foremost a public event where they're like, ooh, public event starting, go run to this area and participate. It's like something that's more unique and organic to the world. Man, we need to be fucking video game developers. Or at least on the board to tell them good ideas, because I'm not that point yet. I can't fucking program that shit. But just stuff like that, and adding variety to the gameplay. I don't even. Hopefully, I'm excited to see. I didn't even know there was going to be open world elements, so I'm interested to see, or at least larger area elements. So
yeah, there's supposed to be big open world sections and tons of side quests. About 35-hour campaign roughly, and I don't know. They're already one-upping Destiny and the weapons. Not so far with the demo weapons because it's pretty limited selection, but you can craft your own weapons just by shit you pick up in the environment. So when you pick up enough materials, you can go and make a weapon.
Can you craft legendaries?
What makes something a legendary is the fact that it has multiple slots.
Gotcha. So
a legendary has 3 slots, an epic has 2 slots, and then a rare has 1 slot.
I wonder if they'll have things along
the goal of getting legendaries and epics isn't just to get a weapon with multiple slots, because you're going to outlevel a weapon eventually, but it's to get it and scrap it. The mods that are, because they have mods that are unique just to those items.
Gotcha. It'd be cool if they had. I always like the idea of Destiny with their exotic weapons, like weapons that are like massive. They add massive changes to how you play in the environment. Like something like just crazy types of weapons. They don't need to be like fucking nuclear missile launchers, but just something that adds another level of expression to how you play. Like how Destiny has like the Zalo Supercell or whatever, where you're focusing groups of enemies because your lightning's arcing between them and shit like that. Or like the Bad Juju, where the more headshots you get, you're getting a refresh to your super energy. Or even something unique in a level, like how it affects the class. So say like you have a tank class and they have like some kind of exotic shotgun that they can get, that if they get a kill with it, it like gives them a shield or something. So it helps them tank more efficiently. Or like a sniper for the Technomancer, that when they get a headshot or score a headshot, like these little Technomancer bots pop out of it and float around to heal your teammates or some shit like that. Things that help you further express yourself while playing, but they're in the weapons instead of the actual class. I always thought that what they did with the exotics in Destiny was cool as shit. So it'd be cool if they implement that here as well.
I
Again,
know they seem to do that. Like the shotgun makes enemies float.
okay.
One of them, some of their abilities proc like every couple of seconds in battle.
Hmm.
Some of them work really well with certain classes. Like there's a weapon that amplifies flame damage and causes flame damage, so it works really well on the Pyromancer. And then um, I'm hoping that it seems like I'm hoping that they do come out with like some class specific weapons. I think that would work really well, especially with the roles. It seems like the subclass, when you choose your path and how you build it, like at least with the trickster, one of them focuses on getting health back. One of them seems to focus on uh, giving you armor buffs, and then the other one focuses on damage buffs, which I guess would influence how you play a little bit. Like one makes you more tanky, one makes you more deadly. One makes you. I don't. It's just that I don't feel like those are different enough. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering what they're going to do because they don't really change how you play the characters.
Yeah. Or maybe something along the lines where if you pick a path, it affects the way your abilities affect the field. It's like maybe something like it like so if you play trickster and it jumps into like a so, or maybe it starts as like rogue, and then if you pick this one you could pick the trickster path, and so now when say if you put up your like slow shield, instead of the bullets slowing down they like bounce back to whoever shot them or something like that, or then like and now instead of the trickster you have like the assassin type where you're more mobile and you can stealth yourself. But I get what you're saying, something that makes the gameplay more unique. I hate another pitfall that hopefully they don't fall into here is I hate when the changes that you get when in character growth are percentages, damage modifiers, or health modifiers. They're boring and they're lazy, to be honest with you. So I always look for stuff that, again, you want to have your class and fulfill its role, but you don't want to be tethered to that role 100% where every trickster plays the exact same. You want to have a little bit of freedom of expression, some wiggle room to be like, hey, I'm a trickster, but I play the more agile trickster. Or I'm the trickster, but I play the more fucking jokester kind of trickster, whatever, where I can like bounce bullets back, or I can
Debuffs.
blind people or debuff them or something like that. Yeah, something that more affects the way you play. And again, this is all nice to have, but again, we understand this is difficult because everything comes down to balancing, making sure you're playing and the game's not too easy, and there's not one subset that's too strong, so no one picks the other two. So it's all that delicate back and forth to make sure that you have the expression, but the expression is good enough where all three paths you can choose are unique and varied enough where you won't have everyone just pick the best one. You want to have enough pros to each type of path that you pick that makes them all interesting and unique, where they're almost three classes in and of themselves. So they don't feel like everyone just picks the damage one. Because if you're playing the trickster right now, if I were to sit down and I looked at those three trees and two make you tanky and one makes you regen health, but one makes you do more damage, I'd be picking the one that does more damage like every fucking time because that's just the type
Yeah.
of class that it is. I wouldn't be dealing with the tank ones. So you don't want to have people completely sectioning off ones that have built just because they're that uninteresting or their modifiers are shit. So that's another pitfall you gotta be careful with. What these devs have to be careful with is making sure that the growth you have as a character is good and it's not just percentages and you feel like you're actually growing. That character growth, that RPG element is very important as well. So again, when does the game come out, by the way?
April.
April. Well, that's pretty
Yeah, I
close.
think it comes out in like real early April. I'm loading it now to see if I can pull up the skill tree and look at it because all I remember is that they didn't strike me as
Engaging.
terribly varied. Yeah,
I could probably Google it too.
and like I think I've had fun playing the game. I really have, but I do want to see them do more, and I'm hoping that they do. The creature design, like there's a lot we haven't seen that is implied by the movies and stuff. So, uh, but more to the point, what do you think? What do you think makes a good looter shooter, and what do you think drags a looter shooter down. I mean, obviously, too much sameness, too much repetition of the wrong shit, because every game is repetition. And this game isn't trying to keep you playing for years or months or anything of that nature. It's giving you a full experience like Borderlands does, where there's a definitive end, and a definitive story. And what's fun about this story is it's very much feels like a Hollywood movie. It plays like a Hollywood movie, but it's a Hollywood movie of a sci-fi channel
Yeah,
fucking
yeah.
science fiction show. So I like the cheese element
I'm looking
a
at
lot.
the subclasses right now, and they are named. There's the Assassin, Harbinger, and Reaver.
Yep.
And so they are built around a different way of play. Like the Reaver is about healing off of ability damage. So it's not just like the typical heal, but they have some interesting things like when your damage skills end, you increase armor pen and resistance pen. Firepower is increased, and you can mark enemies and kill marked enemies to buff yourself. So it feels more like
I don't feel like they changed the way you play drastically though, and they
nah, yeah.
should.
A lot of them see one really bad sign is if you go to look at a skill list and they're all percentages. Because that's all modifiers. Like 9 out of 10 of these, when you look at them, they're all percentages.
All the small ones are
Yeah,
percentages.
increase.
Big ones, like the path that I chose, which was assassin. The big ones are it increases shotgun damage.
Even
Activation,
that's just a
the
percentage,
deception
right?
skill. Yeah, these are all percentage boosts. Damage, skill ends, increase your weapon.
Yeah, I like that if you
Weapon
for the Harbinger,
bounty.
if there's enemies near you and you reload your weapon, you'll knock them back and deal damage. I think that's kind of cool. So yeah, again, stuff like that, stuff that has you approaching a battlefield differently because you have different tools at your disposal, not just you do more fire
Yeah, but
damage.
how really differently is it? You're already in a group of people. You're already throwing off the same abilities, no matter what class you have. You're already shooting at the same group of people. It's just the benefits you're getting from doing it are different.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm saying like I'm not saying that what we have here is perfect, but I'm
No,
saying
I don't like it. This part very much. It's the gameplay that I like. The skill tree is stupid.
Yeah, from what I've seen, they look like all percentages, and percentages aren't good. Those are just modifiers, as we were saying before.
Like I would like to see some you get an additional set of abilities.
Yeah,
Like actual abilities that are different.
or even they don't even need to
how
be.
you play it.
They don't need to be completely different. Just to be, if you're a harbinger, like 3 of your 8 skills or 4 of your 8 skills are they work in different manners. So say like your blade thing, your temporal blade, if you hit someone and it will paralyze and slice them. Say if you're an assassin, maybe it doesn't do as much damage, but it like can get you behind someone, and then if you're behind them, you do additional damage to their back or some shit like that. Just something that feels more active than just you have a percentage to do more damage now because you click this ability. There's not as much growth there, where you want the growth to be in how you understand and play your class, not how much damage your bullets do or how much damage your abilities do. You want your classes to get more varied and unique and more interesting while you sit there and learn them, and they kind of drip feed you these additional tools you can use in a battle. I think that's what creates good class design, is how your tool set improves as you level up. And again, percentages are not a good sign. Seeing a bunch of percentages are not a good sign. But again, we'll see what they do. They may also, again, a lot of times these things get balanced. It could come out and the Trickster can be the strongest class in the game, and they have to readjust them or rework them slightly. So,
well, right now they are the biggest in terms of DPS, but they don't have any crowd control type stuff like the Pyromancer does, and they're not really ranged like the Technomancer is. So they don't have anything that allows them to do anything special besides shoot bang distance.
I like to answer your question, and we've talked about this before when we talked about Destiny and our looter shooters after everything happened with Anthem and Anthem being canceled now. I think the biggest thing is just the things we've mentioned throughout this episode is to maintain that healthy relationship between the developers and the community. Make sure that your gear acquisition system's decent, and with this game, it's a little bit different because with looter games as a service looter shooters, they have to waste time in the people playing so they can develop more content. But for this game, it's just a start to finish experience, and you just play through it. So they have a bit more control over the pacing, and they can do whatever the fuck they want. But again, you still need to make sure that the gear is coming to you at a consistent and interesting rate where you feel like you're getting upgrades that aren't just blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, I got a new shotgun at just 3 extra points of damage. It's like, oh, cool, I got this legendary shotgun, and the bullets, like, bounce off the walls or some shit and explode. Or the bullets stick to the wall, and I can, like, knock people into them, and they do a shitload of damage when they explode or something like that. Just things that, again, add more and more tools to your little toolbox that you can apply to a battlefield. I think that's super important, and it's what allows for these games to be engaging, is giving you the same thing like if you would see in Doom or whatever. They're constantly giving you more tools when you approach a battlefield that lets you maneuver through it in a different way to kind of help you, or just kind of show off your skill or your understanding of the game. I think that's kind of important too. So just some of the pitfalls, I think, here again, it's one of the big things, some of the things that this game hopefully avoids, because it's a little late now, the game's already coming out soon, or things that they can adjust, is class diversity and class fantasy, making sure that that's varied enough where people feel like they're fulfilling a role, and in that role that they feel like they're actually having an impact on the field. Like, you want to make sure that every person in your fire squad or your team or whatever is having their own varied and unique impact, so you feel like a fucking team. We want to make sure you feel like a team. A lot of times, like, one thing with Destiny is that, of course, each class has their own class fantasy, but if you're playing on a fire squad of 3 people, you're doing shit together, but you don't necessarily feel like a team. Like, you have roles and there's a unique position that each one of you play when you get into an engagement. So this game's already kind of doing that a little bit better, because you do have classes that are built around fulfilling a unique role. So as long as those roles engage the player and make them feel like they're having an effect on the battlefield with what they're actively doing, and they can be that tank and be useful and be tanky and keep aggro off their teammates so their teammates can work, and the trickster can get behind, can do big damage, can get in and out, and the Technomancer can sustain and support from a distance, can buff their team, can heal, can keep their teammates alive, and the Pyromancer can hop in, nuke from a distance, and everyone feels diverse and unique when they approach their fight. That is also super important, and it seems like they have the setup for this. But I think the what's going to come down to the most important thing, whether or not they fail here, Shawn, is how their battlefields are designed, how their enemies are designed, and how their gear is designed.
So far, I think the enemy design is all right. You've got the grunts. They definitely need, I think, in terms of the world, they need to work on the story and the characters. But I think the battlefield so far designed all right. They actually remind me of a more realistic version of Borderlands.
Yeah,
because this place is fucking wrecked.
One thing I never understood is that they don't do a lot, is that there aren't enemy types that respond to classes. Like, if you have like a trickster or a technomancer on your team or something like that, a lot of these games, they'll have the group. I know that's difficult to do, because then you would have to have the AI respond uniquely to your team comp. So you'd have to account for a bunch of different possibilities, which makes things difficult. It takes time, and you got to do. So I understand why it doesn't exactly exist in the level that my mind's thinking of it. But it'd be cool if a certain enemy type, say they register, they see you have a Technomancer. So now their goal is to harass the Technomancer in one way or another. So now the Technomancer's job, on top of healing his team, is that he has a group of enemies that are working to take him out, so he can't buff his team anymore. Or say, like, the tank's coming up, and you have a specific type of enemy that when they realize you have a tank on your team, that they're working on getting hard hits on the tank to break his shield. So now the tank has something he has to focus in combat, or can call on his teammates to focus in combat to make his job a little bit easier. So kind of like that evolution of the field while you're fighting, depending on the enemy types that are showing up. Again, that all helps to further signify, like, hey, obviously the teamwork's super important. It always feels good when everyone's working together and you're able to call on someone else and they can, like, assist and benefit in a way where you've changed the course of that fight because you've responded accordingly. So it makes the game feel more smart and more realistic in a way, because that's how enemies would react to your life. They don't just run at you like fucking bullet sponges. A lot of games fall to that issue as well, where their battlefields aren't unique enough to kind of help sustain this teamwork style gameplay that you need in these games, or that these games push often. So
it is. I will say that the powers work well together.
Yeah, there's synergy amongst the powers, which is nice.
Yeah. And they do make the class feel mobile. Like in a game where you don't move around super fast, they make it feel like you are this mobile harbinger of doom. And the gunplay is crunchy and satisfying for a game where you're more of a heavy damage dealer, like in Gears of War. Like that's one of the things I loved about Gears of War was how visceral the combat felt,
Yeah.
which is just something that you did not have in Halo, and you don't have in Destiny. You don't feel that crunch and like of when you're shooting somebody or when you're dealing damage. And this game has a lot of that visceral element, which is one of the reasons why I like playing it with controllers, because the vibration just helps add to that meaty impact. You know, when you shoot somebody, because you're like a superhuman, you're some sort of fucking crazy mutant. When you shoot shit, that shit blows the fuck up. Like you shoot a head, it explodes.
Yeah.
Like you beef up your weapons, run up to somebody with a shotgun, and they are in two pieces. It's really, really interesting. The gunplay is satisfying, and it still feels a little bit like Destiny. I'm not going to say it's as good as Destiny's gunplay because I don't think it's there, but I think it's really, really close. And I think they're on the right path, and I think it'll be worth playing even with the kind of pointless modifiers that you get from the upgrade system and shit. What I'd like to see is a little bit more agency, and like I want to see things like really I want to see things impact your how you play the character.
Yeah.
Like you were talking, I want to see shit that changes how I play. Like maybe yeah, I run up into a group, but maybe it works better to not go into the middle group with one class, but to try and rotate around the outside and focus on hitting things from behind. I mean, I don't really know how they would do it.
You could add weak points to enemies, would be one really simple way. Like
Yeah,
say
or
like
make one class. One way the it would work is if to like for the Technomancer, have a path where that is exactly it. Your focusing is precision shots. That's your whole thing. Like you're the most damage out of the Technomancer, but you've got to do headshots. You've got to do like depending on what the enemy is. Like the armored guys, you have to hit them in the back.
yeah, or even like
Your
that
goal
one
is
that
to
one
do those types of
or
shots.
even like that one sniper I had thought up of, where like if you do get a headshot and you get a kill off a headshot, it releases little like nano machines that pop out of their head, and they'll seek your teammates, or they'll drop little heals on the field that heal for little increments of health. So like you could actively support your team while doing your damage, or even they can do random things where like one will provide a speed boost. You're like, hey dude, a speed boost dropped, and then your trickster can jump in. It's like, all right, I got it. And then he's hauling ass now with his shotgun, and he's more improved. Or you have like, oh dude, a fire nano machine popped out. Get it, Pyromancer. The Pyromancer jumps in, grabs it. Now he's nuking from a distance because that's like his purpose and stuff. Or you have like or like even like something like crazy, like an invuln one pops out. It's like, all right, tank, do your shit, and the tank picks it up, and his shield is like info buffed or whatever, and he's just insane. He can just run in and just cause damage or whatever the fuck. I don't know. Just something.
I will say that each path in the at least the trickster tree focuses a different weapon, so it automatically makes you better at this one than that one. Just because like the top one gives you heavy buffs to your shotgun. One of the other ones gives you heavy buffs to your machine gun.
Yeah, but even
so
then, if they're just like
gives you a focus.
Yeah, but even then, if they're just percentages, you're just doing more damage. It's just not enough. You just feel like you're okay. So this is the way I play now, but you don't get like options. It's just like this is the way I play. I just use shotguns now, and like it's not like something like maybe shotguns work in a different way now. So it's something more impactful that gives you a new option to apply. But yeah, so it definitely looks super fucking promising. very excited to see what comes out of it. And if the game does get massive and they get some DLC, they can implement a lot of these very interesting changes in DLC too. So I just hope the base game is really good. It's a solid, straight experience. The more I've talked about it, I think I might be willing to pick it up now that I think about it. But so we could play it together, and then but very excited to see what's to come from Outriders and People Can Fly. Is it Outriders? I think it is.
Outriders, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see it. I did play again, and I was having less of the desync issue, whatever the fuck was causing it that one night. I might have just had shitty internet or something. And Lark actually had came up to me and said, or he had talked to me and said the same shit. Like after that one time we played together that one night, he played again later, and he wasn't having any lag issues either. So it might have just been some kind of server. Yeah, he was saying when he was playing with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
he played his role, so he played backup behind me. So while I was running around in the groups, taking out guys, like I was seeing heads pop around me and shit, which was kind of cool. And I would run in, and what he was doing, because when I'm running in playing solo, I'm taking heavy damage. So like my objective when I get in is to immediately start dealing damage, not just because that's my job, because also I need the health back. And one of the things I noticed was like when I would run in, he would do an aerial bombardment. So while I was running in, like there's the mortar shells coming down, or I should say a mortar bombardment, which is taking out the guys in the middle field, which are the first ones to start shooting at me, which gave me an opportunity to close on the main group and start actually like hammering shit home, which I thought was really good. But I think I'd like to see people try and do some that you haven't seen in your shooters, in like hand-to-hand combat options, or more vehicle options. Like that one of the things that was so cool about Halo is they gave you all these different vehicles, and sometimes a number of different vehicles, so you could figure out how you wanted to get around the environment. And depending on if you picked up like a Ghost or a Warthog, you had different advantages to taking those vehicles, or like the slower moving tank versions and things. And I know that this is going to have vehicles in it, but I don't really know to what extent. So I think it would be really interesting to see what they could do with that.
Yeah. I'm just calling because I know we're going to be moving out of this soon into this new segment. So I'm checking the Discord if anyone wants to participate. All right, but yeah, 100%. So I again, focusing that teamwork play and having impact amongst everyone participating in that team is very important. So I'm excited to see what comes out of it. I'm sure we'll have a good time playing it. And yeah, it seems like there's a lot of people getting excited for it. So definitely, if you've played the demo, the beta, what you think of it, let us know. We want to hear from you guys. Are you excited for it? Do you think there's some issues that could be ironed out? Feel free. Join the Discord, leave a comment wherever you're tuning in. Let us know. So